With this email, I've included 2 links to the latest dock ordinance proposal by the Fort Worth Department of Planning and Development. Like the last 3 proposals generated by city staff, this proposal does not honor the extensive community collaboration by the Dock Steering Committee. In addition to the actual provisions, you need to read the whereas clauses. These clauses appear at the beginning of the proposal and purportedly give the reason for needing to change the city codes at all. The first 4 whereas clauses state the need for keeping clean water, preserving healthy environment, etc. What shocks the conscience is the verbiage that comes next. In the 5th through 8th whereas statements, the proposal tries to find legitimacy by stating that the provisions come from the Dock Steering Committee. Let me read it to you. Whereas, a steering committee was created which included representatives from various neighborhood associations around Lake Worth, real estate professionals, community members, and city staff members, and whereas, the steering committee developed its recommendations for standards for boathouses and other structures to be adopted by ordinance, and whereas, the recommendations for boathouses and other structures were presented to the City Council's Committee on Infrastructure and Transportation. The problem is that this is a lie. Yes, a steering committee was formed, and yes, the Dock Steering Committee did create recommendations based on broad community input. But no, the recommendations that are in the proposal did not come out of that process. The dirty little secret is that the provisions found in this latest proposal were specifically and emphatically rejected by the Dock Steering Committee in its very first meeting. You see, the recommendations contained in this latest proposal come straight out of the archaic Eagle Mountain regulations that were written in the 1950s. In its very first meeting, the Dock Steering Committee emphatically stated that the Eagle Mountain regulations may be fine for Eagle Mountain Lake, but they are completely inappropriate for the needs and the character of Lake Worth. Moreover, the Dock Steering Committee went on to state that no provisions would be adopted just because some other lake did it that way. For this dock ordinance proposal to be legitimate, there is a choice to be made. The proposal either needs to be rewritten so that it matches the actual recommendations created by the Dock Steering Committee, or the proposal needs to change its whereas statements to reflect the truth, such as, whereas the Dock Steering Committee's collaboration was thrown out and the archaic 1950s regulations for Eagle Mountain Lake were substituted. This substitution was in direct opposition to the committee's wishes and intent. Now, when those whereas statements are added, then the proposal will be honest. The final whereas statement says, whereas it is advisable to amend the zoning ordinance to add regulations for the construction and use of boathouse and other structures to ensure the preservation of water quality, habitat, and the natural and scenic beauty of Lake Worth, as well as provide for the health and safety of its citizens and visitors. Unfortunately, no one has been able to provide one tiny scrap of evidence that the archaic Eagle Mountain regulations provide any benefit to achieving these goals. On the other hand, the Dock Steering Committee spent 6 months in intense community collaboration to create an ordinance that benefits everyone. It is very important to understand that everyone knows that this ordinance should be the result of community collaboration. If this ordinance is not supposed to be based on community collaboration, then why is that collaboration cited in the ordinance proposal itself? Other questions need to be answered as well, such as, why has city staff refused to honor the Dock Steering Committee's recommendations? The second question is, what evidence does staff have that the antiquated Eagle Mountain standards are more appropriate for Lake Worth than the standards created by the Dock Steering Committee? The most important question is, if Fort Worth City staff did not like the Dock Steering Committee's standards, then why didn't city staff bring it up during the Dock Steering Committee meetings? City staff not only met with, but led the committee meetings for 6 months on this issue. These questions go to the heart of the issue, which is this: was this an honest process? You can't call the process a collaboration if you throw out the community's work at the end and insert your own personal preferences. The ordinance proposal is either a genuine product of the Dock Steering Committee's collaboration or not. And if the proposal is not going to be based on community collaboration, then it needs to state that fact very clearly. This is Michael Dallas.